Lauren, a child sleep specialist and founder of Little Sleep Stars, and I'm all about helping little ones to achieve their biological best sleeping in a way that's gentle and doesn't feel like an ordeal for them or for you. So I'm really pleased to be sharing with you 3 easy ways in which you can help your little one to achieve their biological best sleeping. So the first thing I'll cover is around what biologically normal sleep is, dependent upon the age and stage of a child. And then I'll move on to how we can manage a child's daytime to make sleep as biologically easy for them as possible, and how we can utilise behavioural aspects around sleep association, sleep cues to our advantage and to make sleep easier for our little one. So the first point around what is biologically normal sleep is such an important one. So many parents I speak to feel their child has a sleep problem because other people have suggested that their baby should be sleeping in a different way. And as a Western society, we have become quite hung up on this notion of a good baby. And a good baby seems to be one who doesn't cry and who sleeps like a mini adult. And it's actually not the way babies are designed to sleep. So realistically, if you are a new parent, you will be greeted with the question around whether you have a good baby and whether they sleep. Unless our babies have been out shoplifting for the duration of their short lives, it's hard to conceive of a baby that's anything other than a good baby. But we do have this expectation placed upon us and upon our children that as quickly as possible our aim should be, or we will be judged on our parenting skills by how quickly they are able to sleep through the night. So human babies are not designed to sleep like adults. The architecture of their sleep is different, and for good reason. So if we think about human babies at birth comparative to any other mammal, calves, lambs, they're on their feet soon after being born. They can walk, they can graze on grass not too long after birth. And our babies can't even hold up their own heads. So there's a real disparity there in their kind of maturity at birth. And it's a lot to do with the fact that humans have evolved to walk upright. So our pelvises have narrowed. And therefore, if we gestated our babies until they were at a comparative stage to other mammals at birth, we just wouldn't be able to give birth to them. They'd be about 6 months old. And let's not spend too much time thinking about what birth in a 6-month-old would be like. Suffice to say, it's not going to work. So our babies come very early and they continue their rapid development on the outside world. And sleep plays a really important part in that. So human babies, at birth, their sleep is very simple in structure. They're either awake or they're quite deeply asleep. They skip a lot of the stages of the lighter stages of deep sleep. So in the early days, they don't even know when night is and when day is. The body clock isn't something they come with, it's something that's made over time. And the first 6 weeks or so tend to be grueling without exception. Babies wake every few hours to feed, partly because they've got tiny tummies and partly because they're driving up mum's milk supply, because they're biologically hardwired to survive. And driving up mum's milk supply, staying close to their source of safety and food, gives them the best chance of survival. So we see them wake very frequently, and the way we can help the things along in the early stages is to help a baby establish their body clock. 2 ways we can do that. The first is that if a baby is breastfed, then mum releases her own circadian release hormones and they will be transferred to baby. There is some experts believe that if we express milk and we feed milk we've expressed in the day during the day and nighttime milk at night, then that has the same effect. But however a baby is fed, we can expose them to a 12-hour daytime, a 12-hour nighttime pattern. Daytime is easy. Keep the lights on, get outside, natural daylight, biggest influencer on the body clock. If they're napping in the day or sleeping at night, they're safest with a parent. So if they're napping in the day, have them wherever you are. Don't creep around. You don't have to turn the TV off. You don't have to not vacuum. We keep everything consistent with daytime activity. We don't have them nap in a dark room. Nighttime is trickier because they're still safest with you, but we want it to be calm, low light, low stimulation. Does that mean everybody has to go to bed at 7 p.m? No, you might want to, and that's absolutely fine. But if you want to be up watching TV, let's think about things like, can we turn the main lights out? Can we have a lamp on? Can we perhaps put baby in the furthest corner of the room and perhaps with some white noise on, just so that it's a different environment for them from daytime. They're not going to sleep for those 12 hours, but when they're awake, we can keep it calm, quiet, low stimulation. Now, you heard me say 7 p.m. there. 7 is a good place to start. That doesn't have to be your baby's kind of daytime, nighttime. As much as we might like our babies on a 9-9 schedule or a 10-10, many of them just can't do that, and that's because naturally their body clock will manifest as a natural lark, which means they're going to be up for the day fairly early, normally between 6 and 7, and that will drive towards their overnight sleep starting earlier on in the evening. It's as we go through adolescence typically that we often make a shift towards being more of a night owl, where we want to stay up later and sleep in later. So if you're watching this whilst pregnant, and you or your partner is an owl and you typically would go to bed at midnight and like to sleep in, you might find the transition to parenthood easier if you try and creep that bedtime back now. I'm not saying get yourself on a 7-7 schedule. That's no more likely for us than a 10-10 is for a baby. But if we can creep our bedtime back 15 minutes every week, 2 weeks, however long we've got, and we get to a stage where if we are up for the day at 6:37, we feel refreshed and like we've had enough sleep, that is going to make dealing with a little lark all the more easy. So it's just something to think about. So these early weeks will be grueling, and then often around the 6-week mark, a little one we're noticing they're taking one longer chunk of sleep in 24 hours, and that might get longer and longer. And by 10, 11, 12 weeks, some babies are sleeping for 6, 7, even 8 hours overnight. And it feels great, and it feels like we've cracked it. If your little one has never done that or isn't doing that, and it doesn't matter whether your baby's longest chunk is the same as anybody else's, but if there is no longer chunk of sleep emerging and we're very much, still at hourly wake-ups at 10 weeks, sometimes that's just normal for that baby, but sometimes it is an indicator that we have a bit of a sleep blocker. And the sorts of things I might be thinking about would be whether there's a possibility of a tongue tie, whether baby has some digestive discomfort, possibly a food sensitivity or allergy. Might baby be carrying some structural tension from their position in utero or from their birth experience? And any of those things might be driving a level of reflux. So they are the sorts of things I would be looking into and just trying to get a feel for whether there's something there that could potentially be optimized. However baby is sleeping, when they get to about the 4-month mark, it is likely to change. People call it a regression, which suggests things have gone backwards, and it feels like it because they start to wake more frequently. It's actually a huge progression. Instead of sleeping in that very simple, awake or quite deeply asleep newborn way, they've made a transition to sleeping like the rest of us, in a more organised and complex way, a predictable way, where we cycle through different stages of sleep on a predictable pattern, and for children that will be roughly every hour. Now, one of the reasons it's a massive progression is they're moving forward, but also they're suddenly a lot safer in their sleep, because as they are when they're in these deeper chunks of sleep and that is stretching out and out and out, actually we know that the risk of sudden infant death syndrome also goes up. So when they start rousing more frequently, that's actually one of the things that keeps them safe. So nothing has gone backwards. It's actually great news. Now, something else that will cause super frequent waking is overtiredness, which brings me to my second tip. Babies often have a much shorter awake window, comfortable awake window, than we expect. And for newborns, it might be as little as an hour. It might even be 45 minutes. It's a very short period of time because the world's so new. It's an assault on their senses. They're used to the calm, the quiet, the dark of the womb, and all of a sudden they're on the outside and everything's going on. And so very quickly they need some time to recover and rest and take a little break from that. Now, if only it was so simple that baby went, it's been an hour, I'm off for a sleep. Some do, but lots don't. And if the environment around them is still stimulating, by stimulating I mean there's a really interesting shadow to look at on the ceiling, they will continue to engage with that. And in doing so, they will go past the point where they would have found it easiest to fall asleep. So keeping an eye on our baby. Sometimes we look for tired signs as yawning, eye rubbing, those sorts of very tired signs. And actually what we're looking for is baby just a little bit of gaze aversion, baby just starting to lose a little bit of interest, but not to the point where, they're kind of really snuggling in. So this doesn't mean that every hour, we have to create perfect conditions for sleep. It just means if we've got visitors or something's going on, that maybe we pop our baby in a sling or a carrier and we just, have a little walk around the house with them. We just take the levels down a little bit and give them the opportunity to go to sleep. They might sleep for an hour, they might sleep for 20 minutes, and all of those things are fine. Small babies, or indeed babies of any age, do not need to be on a very predictable schedule. But the younger a baby is, the more their kind of sleep needs will vary. So they will, if we catch them in the right window, we give them the best opportunity to take the sleep that they need. As a little one gets older, that comfortable awake window stretches out, but still not as much as many parents expect. And by 4 months, a baby might only have an hour and 45 minutes, 2 hours of comfortable awake time in them. The problem comes is that a lot of babies don't fall asleep kind of unprompted until they are absolutely exhausted. And once they're exhausted, they're releasing a hormone called cortisol, and that makes getting to sleep harder and it makes staying asleep harder. So sleep tends to breed sleep, and little ones who sleep well in the day tend to then have the best chance of sleeping well at night, which is completely counterintuitive. You would think the more tired they are, the more they're awake in the day, the better they'll sleep at night. And often the opposite happens. And once baby is overtired, they will fight the process of going to sleep. This is where we then end up driving them around in the car, or really kind of elaborate schemes of getting them to sleep. Whereas if we catch them in the perfect window, they're primed, they're ready, and they can take the sleep they need and wake refreshed. So the third point really about how a baby falls asleep becomes all the easier when we catch them in the right window. So people talk about sleep association, sleep habits, sleep crutches. There's no such thing as a bad habit around sleep unless we were doing something dangerous to get our child to sleep or keep them asleep. So we have habits that work for us and that we're happy with, and habits that we would like to change. And that will vary from family to family, and even within a family over the course of a child's lifetime. So rocking a baby to sleep, feeding a baby to sleep is not a bad habit. Where that comes from is that once little ones have made the change in how they sleep, they will wake through the night. And some babies, whatever they had at bedtime in order to fall asleep, they'll look for that a few times through the night. So if a family is feeding a baby down at the start of the night and they are doing that a few times through the night, and that is working for everybody, there is no bad habit there. Quite the opposite. Feeding a baby to sleep is a really normal and natural way of helping them to sleep. Boobs are our superpower when it comes to getting babies to sleep. The whole process is designed to induce those lovely, sleepy, relaxed feelings. But for some families, some of the time, either from the outset or at some point further down the line, they would like a little one to be able to, when they wake in the night, and it's not if, it's when, for them to roll over and go back to sleep. And for some little ones, that comes down to how they've fallen asleep at sleep onset. So I would always look at, in those early months, a baby's a bit of a blank canvas. And actually some babies are really amenable to falling asleep in all sorts of ways. So I would have an experiment. I would see what baby is comfortable with and amenable to. If a little one isn't happy to go down any way other than being fed or rocked to sleep, and you foresee a time that you might want to change that, it always pays to look at what other cues they have around their sleep. So if we use an infant safe room spray, pillow spray, something like that, or we stroke a baby's back as they feed to sleep, or pat their bottom, or we say something to them over and over again very gently and softly, or bedtime smells a certain way, or sleep smells a certain way, sleep sounds a certain way, sleep feels a certain way. And all of those things, what we're doing there is something called habit stacking. So that if all of those things are present whilst a baby is fed to sleep or rocked to sleep, and there comes a time that we would like to fall asleep in a different way, well, we still have those other cues there, but those cues are dose dependent. The earlier we start them, the more embedded and intertwined with sleep they become for a little one. And the same is true of bedtime routines. So I would start a bedtime routine as early as 2 to 3 weeks, a very simple one, just a couple of steps, same order, same time, before we settle down for that, kind of the overnight period. Is reading a story with your 3-week-old going to help them sleep better? No. But it's a nice pattern. It creates a kind of a rhythm and a flow, and it can help a little one to sleep in different environments. And if there comes a time you want somebody else to put them down for sleep, the more consistent and embedded routines they have, the more confident and secure they are around the change of environment or the change of personnel. So lots of practical tips there, and hopefully an understanding of the fact that sleep can be a challenge. Nothing kind of stays the same with babies, and sleep is no different. So it is something that evolves over time, and the one thing, if you take nothing else away, is it doesn't matter whether your sleep situation would work for anybody else. There is no should when it comes to sleep. It's about, is what we're doing working for us? If it is, great. If not, and you feel it needs to change can always be achieved gently and in a way that feels like you're working with your child rather than against them. For anyone who feels that they do need some one-to-one help, I have an exclusive baby and toddler show discount of 20% against all of my sleep packages. I so rarely do discounts that they're not available on the website, but if you do have a look at the website, which is littlesleepstars.com, choose the package you would like and then email me directly, lauren@littlesleepstars.com. I'll be happy to arrange that and set that up for you at the discounted rate. We also have the on-demand platform where you could check out Sleep Basics on demand, a 10 mini series of videos, which covers everything from napping to early rising and everything in between, to help you really understand the kind of the what and the why of any sleep challenges that you may be experiencing. So I'm going to pop in the comment section my typical average sleep needs by age. Please bear in mind it's a guide, it's a starting point. Not all babies will fit perfectly within it, but it's a good place to start. And if you have any questions, please also pop them in the comment section and I will be really, really happy to answer those. So I hope you enjoy the rest of the weekend. I hope you pick up some fabulous bargains, and I may talk to some of you again soon.